All right.
Welcome everyone to First World TV. My name is Marcy Smith and I'll be your host. I want to say congratulations to America for your new president. We have Dr. Mahmoud El-Kati joining us today in the studio. If you all remember, he was here with us a little while ago to talk about, when Barack Obama was elected for the Democrat Party. And now he's here to talk to us about, what we should do and how he feels and, just everything. I'm so excited. So, Dr. Mahmoud, how do you feel?
How are you, first of all? Nice to be back with you again, and you're looking swell and all of that.
Thank you.
Well, everybody knows what happened. I suppose there's not many people on this earth who doesn't not know that Barack Obama is the president-elect of the United States of America, the most powerful political, military, economic complex in the history of the species, I should say. What shall we say? I mean, nobody was really ready for this, although everybody claims they were. It's sort of a minor miracle. It's something that a few people have thought about over the years.
But this is something that you was waiting for forever, though, right? Part of your movement?
Well, yes, in a way, among other things. That's a good question, and I answer it differently from most people who say that I don't think I would have lived long enough to see this day. I don't quite put it like that, because while I had nothing specific as somebody being the President of the United States in mind, my vision was broader about freedom and justice and equality, which applies to people, to nations, to cultures, reclaiming, reconstructing their humanity. That is people who have been wounded, oppressed in these last 400 or 500 years of history. So I never thought specifically about a black person becoming the President of the United States. That's a kind of a given in the process of winning one's freedom. I just think that's the kind of the way I think about it. I've thought about it. So it's not surprising, even though I confess that I was cautiously optimistic about the possibilities of him being the president, knowing the country as I do. It's made many false starts toward democracy and towards dealing fear with African American people, and it's always has retracted when push comes to shove, the 11th hour. This has happened before. After the Civil War, there was a great deal of promise in a period called the Reconstruction period, and the powers that be summarily withdrew their support for black people's right to be citizens of the United States. And so,
and knowing that you say that, when I was at the voting, when I went to vote, I couldn't tell you how many times I checked to make sure that I have, I don't want anything to go wrong. Barack Obama, and I just, because, like you said, you feel like that, you get so close, and then it's taken from you,
The next big promise happened during what we pleased to call the Civil Rights era, which began in the 1950s after World War II. There was lots of progress, incremental progress. That is, you can measure progress by certain events, like the murder of Emmett Till, where it caused the world to focus on the irresponsibility of the American government towards African American people, where the young man was murdered in Mississippi. Thanks to a heroic mother, this brutal murder was exposed to the entire world, revealing the hypocrisy of America. And then 3 months later, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat in a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. And that, you measure those things. And then in 1957, you have children, 9 young people, integrating the Central High School in Little Rock. And then we had the following year, the organization of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, where Dr. King surfaces in an organization. And originally, he was drafted to lead a movement in Montgomery, which lasted 391 days. But in 57, you had another civil rights organization to add to the NAACP and the Urban League and the Congress of Racial Equality. So the fourth level, that's progress. Dr. King surfaces in 1960 is when the genie was let out of the bottle, when students at North Carolina Agricultural and Mechanical College began the sit-in movement, which spread like wildfire across the South and then across the country. And for the first time, you had students in the American college system engaged in real politics. I mean, real non-campus centered politics dealing with the community, heavy issues such as, you know, the system of segregation, which is really the heaviest of issues, which assigned black people to a kind of social death for all of these years. First there was slavery, then there was segregation, which is another form of slavery. It's not freedom. And then we had all sorts of movements, freedom rides.
So you said the students, though, were
yeah.
really involved. And I think that played a big part, you know, this time around with Barack, too.
Well, that's part of the legacy. These students kind of cleared the way, and for student activism, the Congress of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee became the shock troops of the Civil Rights Movement. These students who were organized on the heels of the sit-in movement in Raleigh, North Carolina, at a historically black college called Southern University, called into being by a great lady, unsung hero, Ella Baker, who organized, who was a civil rights worker years before this happened at the NAACP, and brought the students together. And you had an independent, autonomous student organization which took real chances, and they began to hold voter registration campaigns, freedom schools, all of that.
Why do you think it's so easy to get the students involved?
Well, I'm not sure it was that easy. No, it wasn't that easy.
Okay.
I mean, it's like Barack Obama became president. We didn't know this was going to happen. It started with 4 students having a bull session at North Carolina A&T College, freshmen even, who decided to challenge themselves about this system which assigned them to social death, you know, like you didn't exist. And they went down to Woolworth, I'm trying to shorten this, at a five and dime store to sit in to be served like other human beings. And they weren't served, they were taken to jail and so forth. And thereafter, many other students joined them. So I don't think it was very, very easy. As I said, for the first time in the history of American college campuses, you had students involved in real politics. I mean, the real stuff with real issues, not you know, mock sessions of Congress like we used to have on college campuses, but engaged in trying to change the country and challenging the established order. That's the first. So,
starting with the fresh new minds coming into the world.
Well, many students joined, and white students joined these black students, and the rest has to do with a series of movements, of freedom rides, of read-ins and wait-ins, and God knows what, challenging the institutional structure of racism. That is to say, white supremacy. That's what I mean by racism, white supremacy. And from 1960 through 62, you had all sorts of things, integration of college campuses in the South, Mississippi University, James Meredith, James Baldwin's voice hovered over all this, the great writer who recorded a lot of this stuff. In 1963, University of Georgia and the University of Alabama were integrated. All these were landmark steps in this long struggle. And finally, in 1964, the Civil Rights Bill Act was passed, which was the Public Accommodation Bill, which allowed black people to no longer endure social death. That is to say, like, you're not here, you're not existing. You're downtown, but you can't go to the movies, you can't buy a sandwich, and so forth. That's social death. There's a public, but you're not a part of the public. You know, it's like a caste system, C-A-S-T-E. So, Civil Rights Act of '64, for the first time, the federal government lived up to its responsibility by passing a bill in the Congress and being executed by the President of the United States. So all of these previous years, the United States government never respected the 14th Amendment, which gave black people the right to be citizens in 1864. We need to straighten all of this out. So you know that people are not just on welfare, and they're not just doing these deeds. They were shut out of the society, and that's the response. And if people didn't do what people have done through the long hot summers from Watts and Detroit and
or even teaching like you, right? Teaching the history.
Yeah. Okay.
We owe it to people like you too. Okay. We do, because we got to know. If we don't know where we've been, it's gonna be hard to get to where we're trying to go. So
that's a part of it.
So I appreciate you a lot.
But the major part of it was people risking their lives and going to jail and being beaten. So you had a Civil Rights Act of '64, Civil Rights Act of '65, giving black people a vote, and that's when America began to change politically. Once people who were shut out of voting for all intent and purpose in the 11 Confederate states of the South, and they had a hard time voting in some other places too, because even though you lived in New York, you know, and you had the right to vote, you didn't have very much to vote for, because these racist northern politicians manipulated the game of politics and only saw them when there was time for an election. We weren't really engaged until the '65 Civil Rights Act, which gave people the right to vote. And you could, for instance, in a state like Mississippi, which was about 45% black, you had no real elected public officials except in the all black towns. And you had maybe 5,000 or 6,000 black people in the state of Mississippi who had the right to vote. The vast majority of black people couldn't vote, and they couldn't vote because there were all kinds of egregious acts, you know, leading from, you know, acts of literacy, you know, like you had to pass a test and so forth.
Wow.
To be able
just
to
to vote?
Yeah, and not just to vote.
Well, okay, I don't want to say it like that, but I mean, you would think that why would I have to take a test?
Yeah, because you're black. That's it. And you're disenfranchised that way, and you are you know, murder, intimidation, fraud, everything was used to keep black people from voting. And once we got the right to vote, then you see the southern landscape change. For the first time, you had blacks since Reconstruction elected to public office in numbers. And this was happening at the same time that the long hot summers were happening, 65, 66, 67, as I alluded to, Detroit, Watts, Newark, these great rebellions. I don't call them riots, they're rebellions. They're responses to something that happened to a people. That's not a riot. A riot has no political or economic consequences. This grew out of history. What happened in the 1960s, that they call riots, was as legitimate as Nat Turner's rebellion in Virginia in 1831, which was a revolt of slaves against the power structure. Well, that's what happened then. And then groups like the Black Panther Party emerged, and the Deacons of Defense and Justice, people who were willing to give their lives to defend themselves in their community. This is all a part of history. It's not black and white. It's about oppression. And people not wanting or not willing to struggle against their oppression. That's what this is. Slavery was an oppressive system. So was segregation. And the way people behave, because they're human beings, they revolt against those systems in one way or another. If you can't do it by word or some deed, you do it by some physical act. And I don't think not that I'm advocating that, that's just the way human beings behave. Human beings behave. The founding fathers, you know, took up arms to defend their rights, and so do other people. And black people are no different from other people. So we got to disabuse ourselves of the notion that this is just about what they call race. It is not. It is about the oppressor versus the oppressed. And whenever you have a system like slavery or oppression, it's a recipe for some sort of warfare, because that's what John Locke said at very best, I should say, and the very best, about slavery. In effect, when people are enslaved, you know, that's a form of warfare. It's not standing armies, but the people who are enslaved don't want to be enslaved. And the people who enslave them don't want them to be free. So you have a recipe for war. That's what slavery is. It was an institution which was violent at the core, and black people were always trying to escape, run away, Underground Railroad, whatever they could do, you know, kill the master sometimes. That's what it was, a state of war. And it was handed down to us out of our history because the founding fathers refused to live up to their own ideals. All men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is what this thing is all about. It's about people professing some ideals which they apparently didn't believe in because they didn't respect them. And so you have this problem. So I'm saying all that to say this. The civil rights movement, in my view, was a success. Not that black people are free, were free by it, but the fact of the matter is you could see clearer now that you could vote, you could elect mayors and people of the state legislatures. That's some change, and that should be respected on the part of all those people, the Fannie Lou Hammers and the Aaron Henrys and the people in SNCC and CORE and so forth, who laid down their lives for black people's liberation. So that was success, but that's only a part of the struggle, you know, to get civil rights, not human rights. Because if you had human rights, you wouldn't even be struggling for civil rights or economic rights or any other kind of rights.
You know, what I want to know for myself, now that we have Barack Obama president-elect, what should I do, like, as an individual? What, you know, because I sit at work and I'm like, do I need to talk? Should I be talking about this at work? Or, you know, how do I continue, you know,
You should do what Barack Obama, who is the beneficiary of what I was talking about, and he understands this. He's a product of the civil rights movement. You should do what he asks you to do, to help in any way that you can, as a citizen, as an active citizen, as an engaged citizen. Let's deal with the question of service, not talk about what others should be doing. You should do whatever it is that you could do. Right, that's why I said as an individual. It's whether you could do it internationally, serving in the Peace Corps, or AmeriCorps at home, or any other kind of community activity, helping children, tutoring, doing whatever you can to help. That's another kind of battle that's harder sometimes than the you know, the physical stuff, is to help people change their mind.
But I think with him being the president-elect, I know for myself it just gave me so much hope, and it's just when I see the first, you know, Michelle Obama, you know, it's nice to see that, you know, it gives you like a sense of peace and happiness, and you know, just like, okay, you know, we as a people, we can do this. So what would you say then for the community then to keep supporting him?
What you just suggest, you know, you feel good about it, you're euphoric, that's one piece of it. Symbolically, that's a success, but now the rubber hits the road. What are we going to do? You know, and there are many things we can do, you know. We need people, volunteers in school to help our children in tutoring programs. You need everything you could imagine to improve the social health of our community. Whatever you can do, do that. If it's cleaning up the lawns of the elderly, I mean, it should be just as the people in the 1960s were engaged in a kind of struggle, protest around social justice to get justice. We now should have people who are willing to do the kinds of services, social services, that can help our communities, you know, do things for one another, with one another, and so forth. We can improve in a lot of things. We got to change our minds about how we raise children and so forth. So, there's a lot of work to be done. In the name of Barack
and the
Obama.
Opportunity is here now. So we, as you know, as individuals, we really need to step out and just get involved, you know, in our communities, our homes. Just all of that. And I just want to thank you for stopping by, and thank you for all the teaching and everything that you did also, you know, played a big role.
Thank you.
We learned a lot from Dr. Mahmoud El-Kati.
Thank you.
Thank you all for stopping by and listening to First World TV. Have a good evening.